the menu here.
Oops. Oh, okay.
Oh, it just started.
Okay. All right. Okay, great. That took me a minute. Okay, great. So in that case, we are live. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining. So yeah, so today we have Professor Yoon, who will be giving us a guest lecture. During his talk, right, there will be portions of his talk which will be which is unpublished work, right? So for that portion of the talk, we will be pausing the recording of the session, right? And we will resume once we go back to the public discussion. Okay, so yeah, so without any further ado, Sejong, take it away.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so nice to meet you, everyone. So my name is Sejong Yoon, and I'm an associate professor at the College of New Jersey. And those of you who are not so familiar with the geography of the New Jersey, the College of New Jersey, or TCNJ, is located in Ewing, a small city next to the Trenton. I believe everyone knows where Trenton is. That's the capital of the New Jersey. So we are a primarily undergrad institution, and we have a master's program, but only in the School of Education and the business. So we don't have a master's program in computer science department. And we are a general liberal arts centered education institution. So most of our students are really studying undergrad, focusing on undergrad study, and we don't have masters or PhD in computer science majors. So I just a brief introduction of myself is before starting our today's discussion. Just brief introduction of myself. So I got my bachelor's and master's degree back in South Korea, and I came to US in 2010 and finished my PhD in 2016 under the supervision of Professor Pavlovic and Rutgers University. I also worked with Professor Kapadia near the last 2 years of my PhD. And then since then, I just right after graduation, I joined TCNJ, and it's been my 6 years here at TCNJ. So my research interest, that I have a slide right after this, the title slide. So today's talk is about undergrad understanding and generating images using subjective attributes. So since around 2012 or 13, this is not really my PhD. Neither my PhD thesis topic nor my main area of research, but all professors have their secret projects under their hood, and this is one of those secret projects I've had researched over I believe nearly a decade now. So I have a personal interest in this aspect, and I would explain why. So it's not working. Yep. So this is my general research statement. So I'm basically I personally categorize myself as statistical machine learning guy. So I utilize the statistical learning theory and applications of it. And my main research focus is currently the human crowd and environment understanding. That's where I have an intersection with Professor Kapadia over the years. And the understanding human motion, because that's a decentralized decision-making process is involved. Not all, there's no, in terms of crowd understanding, there's no really boss there that, well, sometimes we have some guide, but most of the time, those mobs and a larger amount of crowds, there's no really one centralized person who govern the behaviors of the people. So that's why I try to link my PhD thesis and distributed learning and to this application area. And I was also interested in that not all humans are rationally making decisions. Some are based on their own personal preferences and their emotions, and the many kinds of perceptual science topics are involved in making those decisions, and those accumulated decisions of individuals really construct what crowd behavior. So that's where the link between today's topic and my main area of research. I also had have some experience in computer vision. So you may have seen my introduction in Discord. So I do have some background in computer vision, and I also have some small projects that I work with my undergrad students here that is who are working on 3D reconstruction and so on. And I also have some students doing the robotic, these toy robots, and we are also planning to purchase a relatively. Oops, I'm sorry for the noise. I didn't recognize. I didn't realize that I have a bit audio here, and so this is the small robot project that one of my senior undergrad had for their capstone research last year, and then I also had back in South Korea, I had some experience in medical imaging and other applications of statistical learning. So that's my basic research statement. So today's agenda is about that top left corner, okay, top left corner of the slide. So I was looking for a link between that, the perceptual scientific topics and of human decision-making process and the relationship to its, the group level behavior of people and crowd. So to understand this, we need to know it's a so big problem, and you can't really tackle everything in once. And I don't think that's possible potentially in my life. So what I'm thinking is I will tackle relatively small problems one at a time, and then try to contribute gradually contribute toward the full understanding of this human perceptual decision-making process. So what I'm particularly interested in is in the understanding images and videos, and particularly the semantic understanding of the images and videos. So not just recognize what are in the image. I want to understand what is going on, the semantically what is going on, and not both in terms of holistic understanding and also some fine details. So I would focus on a particular attribute that people have been investigating in this field. That's called subjective attributes. And there are several subjective attributes out there, and the examples of subjective attributes include, examples of subjective attributes include, I have an example in the later slide, such as memorability, aesthetics, evoked emotions, and interestingness, popularity, that kind of stuff. And I would focus on the image memorability because aside from the other attribute that's called interestingness, that's the one that I mostly focus on. And then the later part, I have a couple of slides, maybe about 5 or 6 slides that are trying to tackle this problem in an inverse manner. So understanding images is it's like a problem that given an image, I want to know what's going on. Now, the inverse of the problem is given a description of what's going on, what is the image? How can we generate an image that does that? Or given an image and the text description, can we modify the image such that it follows the description? Okay. So nowadays the literature says that they are called text guidance and image guidance. So, but anyway, so that's the type of problems that I want to discuss today. And I would also introduce some unpublished works in the image generation utilizing the memorability. Before I jump here, there's a reason why I requested for not recording this, because I'll mention it later. Okay, all right, okay. So all right, so what are the high level human cognition? So I would categorize them into 3 levels. So the low level cognition, we have recognizing the individual object, maybe detecting where they are, and we want to segment, pixel-wise segmentation. And in the middle level, so how do they compositely understood, and what's the event and activities happening, what kind of event and activities are happening. It doesn't have to be videos like this, although I put the video as an example, it doesn't have to be. So maybe in the image, using an image, you can see, say, for example, the image in the slide. So just looking at here, oh, okay, so the bartender is pouring maybe a milk, okay, into a cup. You can describe an activity in the image. So the understanding event and activity in image and video, also the causality. So why are these people are fighting or hugging each other? So is there any relationship, causal relationship between their previous behaviors? Okay, and then on top of, even on top of this behavior level, so it's just a factual description. So these event and activities are factual description, and on top of this, what aspect, what attributes are evoked by the stimuli input. So you're looking at these images, what do you think? Is it interesting? So are these people are fighting? So is it interesting fighting? No, maybe not. Or some maybe. Or is it aesthetically pleasing? Okay, or is it something creative? Okay, so how do we define a measure in creativity? So that's something that's, the Professor Gamo has been spending a lot of time over the years, I guess, or nearly more than a decade, I guess. And, there's all these things are really high level, that high level understanding of the image on top of this middle level. So what are the subjective attributes? I already gave you an example, but you could say, you could point out, list of things, something like this. So interestingness or safety, evoked emotions or sentiment of it. Note that these are not just the emotions or sentiment, they are evoked sentiment and emotions, meaning that these emotions and sentiment were generated by the images and the videos that you are watching. So there's some stimuli that you get these emotions and sentiment generated by them. And then the memorability, can you remember some image or video better than the others? Or aesthetics, do you like this aesthetically beauty than the others? And creativity is something new, novel than what you have seen in the past. And popularity or virality, that's kind of derivative subjective attributes, but they also are good examples of them. So at some point, and maybe about 3 to 4 years ago, so people were, because these papers are coming out pretty frequently, and they are trying to, promote their findings. So people gathered together in several leading workshops, okay, some workshops in the leading conferences, and that's where we discussed these types of attributes. So in this talk, I would focus on this image memorability. So here's a quick quiz. Given an image, how likely we remember it? So you see the 6 images here, and I'll give you a couple of seconds. So try to sort these images in the order of memorability, say the most memorable to the least memorable ones. Say 3 seconds. Okay, so decided your mind. So the answer will come out later. So given an image, how likely we remember it? So what you see on the top left are the examples of images in this what's called the SunMem data set. So Sun Memorability data set, that's a collection of roughly 2,222 images. It's not roughly, it's exactly 2,222 images. And the most memorable images are about 86% of people on average, they remember these images better than the others. On the other hand, these images are relatively less memorable. Those are 34%. Only 34% were remembered. And there are somewhere in between. So typically an image is remembered by general public roughly about 60 to 75%. And those images with higher memorability would have a higher than 80, and less memorability would be less than 40 or 30. So this is a topic, it's an old topic in psychology. So there are psychological findings dated back in 1960s or 70s. So people remember particular images depicting everyday scenes or events or shapes or arbitrary forms in long-term memory. So there's a difference between the short-term memory and long-term memory. Short-term memory is what you can remember within an hour, but long-term memory, those are the things that you can remember for really the long time. So the human memory first stored in the short-term memory. It's like computer. So it's first stored in the main memory, that's a short-term memory, and then it's stored. And then after some repetitive trial or exposure to the same stimuli, or for personal reasons, okay, so personal reasons, that they may be transferred to the hard drive. So it's a long-term memory. So people can remember really the quite fine details of the particular image in a long-term memory. It's been known. So, but not all the gist of the images, but also some details can be remembered as well. That's also the findings that, both in the classic and the more relatively recent papers have found. So if you see a picture that is very similar to the one that you saw before, and you can even find what's the difference. Okay, so why is it missing here? Why is it not here? Something like, why is it here or not here? Something like that. So what are the highly memorable images? So really, the obvious answer is it's subjective. So when I show you this picture in this talk, then maybe after 2 to 3 days, you would remember the left one better than the right one, because that's where you are. Well, technically speaking, maybe not now, but technically speaking, that's what you remember, right? But there are psychological evidences indicating that some images are more memorable than others, even without such priors. So that's where this, the memorability study computational memorability study has started since 2011 and continue going on. So it was kind of several papers were out, including some of the papers I wrote, but probably the real breakthrough, it was this 2015 paper by some of the authors shared with the original first 2011 paper. They are from MIT, by the way. So that's the understanding and predicting image memorability at a large scale. So that's where this deep learning method was first applied, and also in a large scale data set. So by large scale, I'm talking about 60,000. So 60,000 images were labeled with the human annotators and trained with a large neural networks and try to predict it. So that's where really the breakthrough happened. And then after that point, it was a matter of, the increasing additional numbers, increasing additional decimal points, and maybe some analytical results. So in the initial paper, let me introduce some findings and the methodology, how they define this notion of memorability in an objective manner. So in the original paper by Isola, by the way, he's currently the assistant professor in MIT. He did his PhD, I believe he did his PhD at MIT and went to postdoc in Berkeley and then came back to MIT for the faculty position. So anyway, the Philip Isola's original paper back in 2011. So they introduced the memorability game that using the image mechanical talk, you are seeing the images. Okay, the subjects are participants. Okay, participants playing this game, and you are seeing the images, and one image is shown for 1 second, and there's a blank screen for 1.4 seconds, and then another image shown, and so on and so on and so on. So there are two types of images here. One is image that you want the subject to remember. And the other is the images that could potentially be repeated, but they are not what you are counting. Okay, so this is to check whether the people are remembering correctly. So maybe people have they can press the space bar to indicate that, oh, I remember this, I saw this before, but they may be slipping, or they may thought that they saw it before, but it was not, right? So they want to check whether the people are vigilant, okay, throughout the game. So images are 256 by 256, and there were 2,222 targets, and there are 8,000 more filler images used for the vigilance to repeat, and also not repeating, but just to filling up the gaps. And there were 665 participants with 90% or more. Data came from the 300 or some people. And each people can participate at maximum of 30 levels, where 200 images per level. And below 50% accuracy, we discarded. Above 50% accuracy, error rate, we also discard. So the memorability score, they define it like this. So for each image, they calculate the percentage of correct detection by participants. So how many out of those 300 something people, okay, out of those 200 something images, how many of them you remember correctly? And out of those 300 people, how many people have remembered that particular image? Okay, so each image was scored by 78 participants on average. So not all images were remembered by everyone. So there are some variances. So on average, there were 78. On average, memorability score was 67.5% with a standard deviation of 13.6. An average false alarm rate. So you press the space, but it wasn't actually a repeat. Okay, that was 10.7%. Okay, so the memorability score is, as you can see, is defined in this row. Okay, so you know the confusion matrix, right? So the memorability score, it's the correct true positive over true positive plus that is false negative. Okay, so that's the memorability score. And they also investigate how reliable this number is, because this is just one round, and maybe each person has an idiosyncratic remember power. Okay, so memory power. So is it something related to subjective? So they separate the group into two, separate the participation group into two, and see whether one group of people remember certain images better than the other group of people. Okay, so to see that, what they did was after they ran the game for each group, and then they sorted out the images in the order of memorability score. Okay, in the order of memorability score, and then they saw that when we sorted out, then the memorability score of those images, of the groups of each group were really following the similar pattern. Okay, so the topmost memorable image is actually remembered by both groups the best. Okay, so of course there's some variance, there, but you know, most of them they remember in consistent manner. And what you see on the bottom is that that's the chance level. So it's not a coincidence. So it's not a coincidence. There's some consistency in terms of which images are more memorable and which one are not. Okay, and they use the Spearman's rank correlation to see whether these two groups are, how much these two ranks are consistent each other, and that's a statistical measure. So they concluded that roughly 0.75 of the image people are in accordance. Okay, so they are. So you could say, in summary, you could say on memorability score, and you build some system to to measure the memorability score in the range of 0 and 1, 0 and 1, and then if your score is consistent to human labelers in terms of Spearman's rank correlation of 0.75, then you can say that your system is as good as human. Okay, so that's how they come up with this definition of memorability gain. So in their initial paper, their initial findings are like this. So what really boosts the memorability of an image and what really suppress the memorability of an image? So the simple features impact little. So such as intensity of color or HSV, they really don't matter. And simple object statistics such as object count, object area, max object area, that really doesn't matter. It matters a little, but not too much. And natural scenes, large structures, and outdoor landscape, they are relatively less memorable. On the other hand, the semantics, so which objects appearing where, that information may have a larger impact. And also the objects and the scene semantics are primarily substrate of the memorability, such as labeled object count, labeled object area, labeled multi-scale object area, and so on. Okay, or scene category, is it a kitchen or is it a living room, that kind of stuff. And the man-made object and person or person-related are really highly memorable than the others. So here's the answer. Can you guess? See if you got it right. Okay, so what you see on the left, that's the high memorable. What you see on the right, that's a landscape. Okay, landscape, so it's less memorable. And what you see on the middle is somewhere in the middle. Okay. All right, so the Isola and their team back in 2011, they also have a new risk paper describing, investigating a bit more further on the details of this memorability score. So they said there are some counterintuitive characteristics in the memorability. So you might think that, for example, the examples what you see in the here, you might think that unusual images are or images with unusual objects maybe better, more memorable than the others. But in reality, they asked people, whether certain images with such properties such as usualness, unusualness, or aesthetic beauty, or domain expert. They asked the domain expert in this perceptual science and ask them whether this image is more memorable than the other. And what they found was all of them are, really do not correlate with this memorability score. So really, what's then help predicting the memorability better? To me, when I first saw this paper, to me it was really counterintuitive, particularly the unusualness, because even in the data set they have, let's say I found chimneys in that data set. And what you see on the slide are actually every single chimney, every single images with a chimney label in it. So, and you can see that these the images with the large chimneys, it's actually from the chimney from the plant, right? So these large chimneys, they should be highly memorable, right? They should be highly memorable. But why? And also they are having a large size relative to the other chimneys that you see on the blue box, okay? And also there's an indoor scene, right? And also there's a very small chimneys out there, right? So that's really counterintuitive. So what we hypothesized at that time is, okay, maybe the unusualness should not be considered as an holistic attribute. Rather, you should consider unusualness in terms of objects. So the semantics do matter more than the as a really one single number to describe, okay, the image. So then the question is, how can we encode this unusualness of an image? So we proposed two measures at that time. So one is a weighted object area. So one of the earlier findings in this image memorability or image understanding in general is that what you see at the center of the image has a higher impact than what you see on the boundary. So what we did was we used the Gaussian mask. Okay, we used the Gaussian mask on with the center at the highest value, and it diffuses over toward the boundary. Okay, and then we used to simply multiplied it to the image as a weight, and then we measured it as a weighted object area, named as a weighted object area, and we counted how many pixels per object with this weighted score, and we saw really significant improvement in prediction of the memorability prediction score. But size is not the only factor, of course. So in some cases, such as this image, so you would find that the large objects are really not so interesting. And what's most interesting in this picture is a person. So maybe we should kind of suppress the too large weights of the image objects based on the data set distribution. So based on the distribution about in the data set, so if the object in the image has a relatively large size, then the typical size you would see in the data set, then that's something meaningful. But if it's not, it's typically the stairs of this size, then it's not that important, even if it is a large one. So that's what we propose as a relative area rank. And we showed that both in qualitative and quantitative measure that would also contribute to the better prediction of image memorability. Okay, so those are what we called handcrafted features. Okay, so handcrafted features. So with the introduction of deep learning, why not? We have access to GPU, and we have access to more people and more data. Why not? So the same group from MIT, they collected the large collection of images, 60,000, and they trained the vanilla AlexNet at that time. So they used the AlexNet, and they used some pre-trained models, but really basically not too much magic there. So, and then they obtained really surprising 0.64 score, rank correlation score. And they also computed this rank correlation of the human subject again. And in this larger data set, 60,000 data set, the human correlation score was 0.68. So that means with this very simple AlexNet-based deep neural net, you could obtain nearly human performance in predicting memorability. So are we done here? So are we done here? So the answer is actually no. So after 2 years from this, where was it? Yeah, this ICCV paper. After 2 years, there was a CVPR paper called the AMNet, which actually obtained 0.67, and some small papers in workshops and follow-up workshops, they obtained maybe 78 or 68 or 69 or 70. So numbers keep growing. Okay, so but because this memorability score is defined such that how likely the machine would make a prediction of memorability as consistent as human. So really, too high score doesn't have too much meaning. So we should have about the similar rank correlation. But anyway, so still at that point, I was curious. So the newly collected large data set does not perform generally well on a smaller data set. So if you just bring that network, pre-trained network, into the oldest sun data set, then you get only 0.67. You would expect that with a large training data set, and actually the large training set actually consists of the old training set as well. So you would think that would work better. But what you get was only 0.63, not 0.75. So I was wondering, why is that? So at that time, my hypothesis was maybe the simple regression of pixels to memorability score may miss the structural composition of the information formed by object and semantics, scene semantics. So the scene parsing is something that was, gaining popularity around that time, about 4 to 5 years ago. So the recent approaches and scene parsing method were trying to get a pixel level annotation of the scene, and we proposed what's called coarse scene parsing. So the abstract or blurry representation of the parsing. So that's really, try to add more semantics, more semantics when making the predictions. So with this, we obtained the state-of-the-art method result, both in the small data set and also the large data set. It's just a relatively small improvement than previous handcrafted features, but we did prove that our method is correct. So anyway, so the memorability prediction on images were kind of stabilized and almost done, but people are still investigating further application of it. So maybe we could try to predict memorability score on the videos. So there were a series of annual competition in trying to predict the memorability score. This time, not only the short-term memory, but also the long-term memory of it. Because this is very important, because for video industry, so video editing industry and broadcasting industry, really creating a video with much more memorable is really important for advertisement purposes. And the first author, she's actually from the French company. I forgot. I'm sorry. The French company, the Telcodia. That's right, probably. Right. Technicolor, sorry. So Technicolor, and they are interested in this video memorability prediction, and they propose the challenges and accumulating all those findings, and also the additional their own models. So they published their work in 2019 as the video memorability prediction task, as well as the data set. So the bottom figure is just one of my the entries that I participated in the challenge with my students. We didn't really won any of the challenge, but we are about the middle of the ranking. But it was a really interesting experience. So just for your information, what we tried to combine, trying to create an ensemble model of utilizing several different existing networks. And this is just a finding. So we finding on this video memorability prediction. So for videos with short-term memorability prediction, our old findings with images actually applies the same. So the images with the people with their faces visible, they are highly memorable. But for the long-term memory, surprisingly, it was the opposite. So with the people and the faces, they were actually relatively less memorable than the ones with the nice scenery and more interesting behaviors going on, rather than daily activities. So those are really actually easy to predict and higher long-term memorable. Okay, so could you please stop the recording?
Yeah, just give me a second. Okay. Okay, so we're back, right? We are back to being live. So yeah, I think so. So students, feel free to unmute yourselves and ask any questions, right? Or if you all want to put a question in the chat, that is perfectly fine as well. I think while people think and digest the talk, I think I do want to comment here that this is certainly a very interesting problem domain, right? And as Sejong said at the end, there's lots of opportunities, right? Ripe opportunities here, right? For those of you who might have research inclinations. So, I mean, I will say that Sejong is on the Discord. He's already been communicating and providing feedback to at least one, right? One group. So if there are other groups, and I do know that there are many other groups that are doing image generation related problems. So I certainly encourage you all to get in touch with Sejong, right, for general feedback and comments. And if you all are interested in working on these kinds of topics, by all means, please reach out. Okay, so with that, are there any questions from the group?
Excuse me, Professor, I have a question.
Yes, please go ahead.
I'm also working on the image generation, but now I have a question that I'm still not clear how the network learn from the training data set. I mean, how to calculate the loss function and things like that.
Oh, so you mean this one, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's a general question.
General question. Okay.
Yeah. I'm still not clear. Does it compare the input, the ground truth image and the generated one,
yep,
pixel by pixel?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the detailed loss function definitions I can't exactly remember, but for this CMSG paper, I believe they used the original input as to compare with the last reconstructed image, because that's how they train this decoder.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Professor. Things like just compare them pixel by pixel, things like that. Oh, got it. Thank you, Professor.
Anyone else? I guess
okay, so maybe a quick question from me, Sejong. So you've been deeply thinking about this problem of image memorability, right? And I appreciated the sort of the grounding, right, to from a cognitive standpoint. So do you think that there are other cognitive factors related to human perception that can also be studied in a similar fashion?
So there were, I believe I had a slide somewhere. Yep. So these were the list of the subjective attributes that have, that lies in the intersection between perceptual science and, the computer vision and so on. So each of these has some papers in vision community. So there's some linkage. So, but not all of them have that long laundry list of the papers following up. So some papers just finished after this deep learning phase started. So because they, if you formulate it in a supervised manner, then larger the data, you just solve the problem. So that's why some people just abandon this topic. But the thing is, I think if you were to apply this in image manipulation, then it's a whole different story. So I guess all of this essentially, if you want to formulate it, then if you want to formulate the image manipulator a manipulation model, then yes, of course, you can use it.
Okay, wonderful. So yeah, you may or may not be intimately aware of these things, right? But so creativity, right, is certainly a very interesting subjective attribute, which is of course recently gaining a lot of traction, right, with GAN style methods now being increasingly used to as a medium for computational creativity. And as you mentioned, we have Professor Ahmed Al-Ghamil at Rutgers, who's really doing some wonderful work in this area, right? So can you comment a little bit on creativity as a subjective attribute? And do you have any, like, are you familiar with work that tries to use creativity as an explicit representation as part of generative methods?
Well, I haven't really followed up too much after the topic has drifted toward the creating the real fine arts. So I only remember when I'm not sure, Professor Kapadia, you remember him, the Babak Sareh.
Yes,
one of the Professor Agama's students. He had this triple paper on the unusualness definition, right? So that was, yeah. So, and then after that point, I believe the papers have drifted toward the fine art creativity. So I haven't really followed up on that aspect. So I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay. I was just curious because I mean I think there are at least a couple of groups right now working in this topic area. So I was just curious. Okay. Great. So I don't see any other questions from the group, right? But I will make another point, right? I think Sejong's talk has been extremely informative. I think there were a lot of useful pointers, right, to other bodies of work. I think for example, the pointers to the workshops, right, were especially relevant. So I would just certainly encourage students who are working in these domains to follow up on these, various references, right? And by all means, please reach out to Sejong offline. He hopefully remains active on our Discord channel. Okay, so I think if there are no further questions, Sejong, thank you so much for your time. Feel free to drop off the call at this point. We'll just be talking about class logistics.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks, Sejong. See you tomorrow, I guess.
See you tomorrow. Bye.
Yeah. Bye. All right. Okay. So yeah, let's transition. But before we do that, any questions or comments? I would certainly encourage you all to be more active, right? Use these speakers as a resource, right? This is an invaluable resource. I think we've had such a diverse set of speakers, right? And I think Sejong definitely presented a very unique topic that that should be very interesting to many of you, because many of you all are working on CV related problems. So any questions or comments? Any general questions or comments? Okay, all right. I don't see any questions or comments. So yeah, so what I'll do is, I also wanted to make another comment. So yeah, I think I appreciate everyone's flexibility, right? Because due to many of our speakers either not being in New Jersey or having special circumstances, a few of our lectures have been on Zoom. So I appreciate everyone's flexibility. And it's good to see many of you all joining the Zoom calls. We will certainly try our level best to revert back to in-person as soon as we can. Right. So my hope is, I'm optimistic that our next lecture after the spring break will be in person. Okay. All right. So with that, what I will be doing now is, so we'll keep it short today. Okay. So I think maybe another 15 minutes, and then we can end early today. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so do you all see my screen? Okay, so I'm getting yeses. That's good. All right. So yeah, what I would like us to do, right? So I think I want to give you all as much information as I can, right? So that you all have a very clear understanding of what is expected for the rest of this class, right? So here is essentially a mostly finalized schedule, right? At least in terms of the assignments, right? So what remains? Okay. So today, right? P3 is due. So it'll be due end of day today, right? So yeah, there will be we had a 1-day extension because we were a bit slow in setting up the project channels. So do people, is everyone comfortable with this deadline? Do people have any comments or questions about P3? Sorry, I'm just trying to get Zoom to behave. Yeah. Any questions or comments about P3? Oh, Catherine is asking, do you want P3 to be in the Discord channel or on Canvas? That's a good question. Yeah, so maybe okay, let me see maybe what the instructions say. Okay. Yeah, I mean, so I think it's clear, right? The instructions, I believe, are clear that the updates should be directly on Discord, right? And in general, right, I think moving forward, we will try to be exclusive on Discord. So yeah, please, if possible, put your updates on Discord directly. For this assignment, I will certainly look at both Canvas and Discord, right? Okay. So, but I encourage everyone to put all of their updates on Discord. Any other questions about P3? Okay, so if there are no further questions about P3, let's go back. All right, so here, so Karthik is asking, what should we submit in the assignment on Canvas? That is a good question. Yeah, so at the very least, right, I think what y'all can do is y'all can submit a simple text, right, text write-up that essentially addresses each of these submission items, right, with acknowledgements that y'all have set up a GitHub repository, right, y'all have invited me, right, to the repository, y'all have, right, populated your Discord channel with the relevant information, right, and so on and so forth. Okay, so a simple text write-up, maybe 3 or 4 sentences, right, that simply acknowledge what you did. Any other questions? Yeah, but Karthik does make a good point. Yeah, I think it is important that the assignments show up as submitted, right? Because yeah, just from a logistical standpoint, right? That will ensure that I grade the assignment, right? Otherwise, if the assignment shows as incomplete or not submitted, right? You all may find yourselves receiving a 0, even though you all might have done the work. Okay, so yeah, that's a good question. Divakar is asking, will you be publishing this deadline sheet? Yes, yes, I will. Okay, yeah, I will. In fact, yes, you will have all of this information available to you very shortly. Any other questions? Okay, let's go back to the schedule, right? Okay, so let's look ahead. So next week is spring break, right? Something I'm sure we're all looking forward to. So the 21st, okay, so the following week, P4 will be due, right? So this will be a midterm project presentation, right? Where every group will give a 10-minute presentation on their project. This presentation will directly go into updates, okay? So I expect this presentation to be very heavy on what you all are working on actively, as opposed to what is the project about, okay? So there's no introduction needed, directly dive into details, okay? So, and I'm actually going to describe details about it. We'll go over the assignments and talk about the specific requirements, right? But this is just a high level. So P4 due the 20th, right? The day before, and you all will be giving an in-class presentation, 10 minutes long. Okay, so this day will be only student presentations. There will be no guest lecture, right? And yeah, and we will be in person, right? There is a small chance I may have to reschedule this based on our other speakers' availability, but I will let you know very, very soon. 25 points for this, right? So y'all should hopefully start seeing that the points are increasing in scope, right? So we're going from, I think, 10 points to now slightly larger number of points. Okay. I have the chat window open, so yeah, if there are any questions, please please shoot. Otherwise, I'll keep talking. So yeah, the next several weeks, right? So the next several weeks, so P5 through P8 will essentially be these weekly updates on Discord, right? Each of them will be 15 points, right? So these are essentially describing your incremental updates about what y'all are working on, any results y'all may have, and what are your next steps. Okay. So the two main sort of final milestones for this class, right, So the 25th, which is the last day of class, right? Each group will give a final project presentation, right? Which is tentatively going to be worth 50 points. So P9, right? Again, so this will be a final project presentation where you all will essentially describe your entire project from start to finish. And this is going to be on the last day of exam week, right? So this is the absolute last day that I can accept submissions. So yeah, giving you all of the time possible where you all can submit your final project report, right? So this will be a written documentation of your project, right? Okay, so that's essentially what your next set of assignments look like, P4 through P10, and the point structure. Okay, so are there any questions? So the reason I'm presenting this to you all today is because if you all have any concerns, right, now is the time, right? Because so I'm happy to try to incorporate your questions or concerns and adjust this this week. But once we lock this in, then we will stick to it, right? Because I don't want to keep changing things. So if are there any questions or concerns about the assignment protocol? So Catherine is asking, is the final project presentation limited to 10 minutes? Yes. So I believe we have 14 projects, right? So to ensure that we have all 14 projects be presented, yeah, we will be sticking to 10 minutes. Any other questions? Can you, so Catherine is asking, Catherine with a C is asking, can you post what you expect to be included in the final project report? Yeah, so I will be literally going through the details for each of these assignments. Okay, so yeah, you all should have this information right in the next few minutes. Any other questions about the assignment protocol, about the points? Aditi is asking, would we present the project in class or online? So that's a good question, right? So yeah, so as of today, P4 and P9, right, which are the two presentations, right, will be in person, right? So will be in class, so not online. If something changes drastically, right, I will let you know. But yeah, as of today, the plan is for the class on 21st of March to be in person, as well as the class on the 25th of April to be in person. Any other questions? Okay, so I don't see any other questions. So let's now go to the assignment details. Okay. All right. So I will literally be publishing these in front of you all. So, okay, so P4, right, which is the midterm presentation, right? So just details on what I expect, right? So 10-minute presentation describing the current status of the project and planned next steps, right? So this is what I'm expecting. What is your technical approach? So I'm starting to look for details. Okay, so no high level stuff. Want you all to dive into technical details. What is your current status of implementation? Any preliminary quantitative results that you all might have, right? So any experiments that you all may have done, any qualitative results, right? So this can be images or videos depending on your project. Interactive demos where appropriate. Any current challenges or any current blockers that you all are facing, right? And how you all plan to address those challenges. What are your planned next steps, right? With a timeline for these remaining activities, right? And what will be the expected deliverable at the end of the class. Okay, so hopefully that's pretty clear. So as you all can see again, right? We're literally, this presentation, I'm not looking for introductory remarks, right? Literally just jump into it. Okay, so jump into your technical approach, describe any results you'll have, and describe your next steps. Any questions about P4? So Karthik is asking, do we record the presentation and submit it before class? So Karthik, that's a good question. So I should edit, right? Okay. The submission will be a PPT file. Okay, so the submission will be a PowerPoint presentation, right? Y'all will give the presentation live in class. Okay. Oops, sorry. So yeah, no recordings needed, right? So you all will submit the PowerPoint file and you all will then be giving a live presentation in class. Any other questions about P4? Okay, so I don't see any questions. Oh, Devat is asking, should we spare some time for Q&A? That is a good question. So So 8-minute presentation plus 2 minutes for questions. Okay, right. So Devat, yeah, so you all can roughly time your presentation to be 8 minutes in length and have a couple of minutes for questions. Any other questions about P4? Okay, right. So 25 points due, right? So the Sunday, right? March 20th, end of day. So let me go ahead and publish this. Okay, let's go back. So P5 through P8 will essentially be weekly updates, right? So this will be on Discord. So let's look at what I'm expecting here. So each of these weekly updates, right, should be a detailed update on Discord regarding the current progress of your project. The update should include what you have accomplished this week, what was your technical approach, any challenges you faced, how did you address those challenges, quantitative and or qualitative results, and what you plan to do next week, right? So if you all can see, this is essentially like an agile project development model, right? So we are essentially following a Scrum approach, right, to project execution. Okay, so every week you all will talk about what you've done, any challenges that you all have, right, and what you all will be doing next week. Okay, so Aditi is asking, would it be just Discord, or we have to upload something on Canvas as well? Yeah, so all of the updates should be on Discord, right? So as I said, keep all of your updates on Discord. Just have an acknowledgement of submission on Canvas, right? So that on Canvas it shows up that you all have completed the assignment. Okay. If you all want, I can write this here, but then I'll have to update but I'll write it here for now. All updates should be on the Discord channel. Please submit a simple submission acknowledgement on Canvas. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Any other questions? Okay, so there are no questions. So yeah, so these weekly updates will be 15 points, right? Due basically, right? The Sunday before the class. So let's go ahead and publish this. Okay, so let me just publish the remaining weekly updates. Yeah, if there are any questions about the weekly updates or anything else, please shoot. Okay, so all of these will be 15 minutes and 15 points. Okay, we're almost there, P8. Okay, so that brings us to the two big ones. So P9, which will be due April 24th. Okay, so this will be a 10-minute final presentation of your project, which you will give in class. Okay, so this is just a rough slide template that I expect you all. Right? So this is the minimum that I'm expecting in the presentation. Okay, so slide 1, title, group members. Slide 2, problem statement and challenges. Slide 3, motivation. Right? Why is this problem interesting and worthy of study? Slide 4 plus, right? So this means that there will be multiple slides here. Prior work and limitations in existing methods. Slide 5 can just be an overview of the proposed approach that you have taken. slides 6+, right? So multiple slides expected, a detailed technical approach, 7+, right? So multiple slides on quantitative results, multiple slides on qualitative results, and your final slide on conclusion and future work. Okay, so any questions about P9? Any questions about P9? Okay, so I don't see any questions. So P9 and P10 will be worth 50 points, right? So together they will be 100 points, right? So we can do the math on it, but that's probably going to be about 50% of your course grade. But the important thing to note is that all of this is incremental, right? So everything that you all are doing in this class will lead up to developing P9 and P10, right? So all of your incremental write-ups, your midterm presentation, everything will be repurposed and reused in P9 and P10, right? So that's important for you all to know. How do you all feel about that, right? Because at least at the surface, it looks like most of your class grade will be dependent on your last 2 submissions, but that is really not the case, right? Because P9 and P10 are essentially what you all are developing over the course of this class. Okay, so any questions about P9 or any questions about the points? Okay, so I don't see any questions. So let me go ahead and publish this. So P9 has been published, right? Okay, so that brings me to P10. So P10 is essentially a written, right, version of all of your updates and essentially a written version of your presentation. Okay, and your project proposal has essentially done about 20% of it already, right? So you all have already written the introduction and related work. So what is P10? A technical report, 5+ pages in length, right? Using a 2-column technical paper format. Okay, so I should write. I was about to write that I will enforce you all to use LaTeX. How do people feel about that? Does anybody have any strong reservations against using LaTeX?
So you mean latex?
Yes, yes, latex or LaTeX.
I mean, is it necessary? Like, if we can submit our project neatly in Google Docs, then will it be necessary to use?
Yeah, the reason, yeah, I mean, I personally have no strong constraints, right? The reason I would suggest it is because it is good practice, right? It's latex or LaTeX, right? Is a good tool for you all to master, right? As you all get increasingly proficient in writing technical documents, right? So it's a good, it's a good tool for document publishing. So yeah, I would in general encourage everybody to use and learn how to use LaTeX if you all haven't done so already. Yeah, so how do people feel, right? Should I make this a requirement for P10? Yeah. Go ahead.
So I think latex will be a good, because as you will make it more better in terms of technical.
Okay, all right. So I'm not getting any strong objections. Okay, so technical report must be written in LaTeX. Okay. Yeah, in fact, so using Overleaf. Okay, so Overleaf is a web LaTeX editor that you all can use. Okay, and in fact, in one of the weekly updates, I will ask you all to actually prepare an Overleaf project and share the link with me. So you will already have some intermediate progress on P10. Okay, right. So it sounds like everyone's in agreement that we will use latex or LaTeX. Okay, so let's see. This is what P10 will look like.
Excuse me, Professor. I'm considering about whether we can our report can be more than 10 pages in one column, since as far as recently I read the papers, they are all in one column. Maybe in my field there.
Okay, that's fine, no problem.
Thank you.
All right, okay, so 5+ pages in a 2-column format or 10+ pages in a single column format.
Okay, thank you, Professor.
All right, any other questions? Okay, so there are no questions. Let's keep going. So general overview of this of the technical reports. Essentially, it follows the structure of a paper that hopefully you all have begun reading many papers. So abstract, 300 word summary of the project. Section 1 would be an introduction, right? So this will, you all have already written this, right? So as part of your proposal, you all have written, or at least written a significant portion of the introduction. Section 2 will be the related work. Again, you all have already done this, right? Section 3 will be an overview of your method. You all will then have one or more sections on describing your detailed technical approach, your experimental plan, your qualitative and quantitative results, right? And your final section, which will be conclusion and future work. Okay, so pretty straightforward. Any questions about this? Okay, right, so P10, 50 points. The due absolute last day of semester, right? So basically the due on the last day of exam, of finals week. All right, so let's go ahead and publish this, right? So there you have it, right? So these are essentially all of your assignments. I hope, I think we will most likely stick to this, right? If there are any adjustments, I will let you know, but I won't make it any harder for you, right? If I do adjust, I will make it easier for you. All right, so let's see, I don't think I had anything to, let's take a quick look on Discord. All right, so everyone's channels should have been set up. Anybody here who does not have a project channel, or does anyone have any questions about the project channels? Okay, I don't see any questions. So Catherine is asking, did you want our GitHub repos to be public? I don't particularly have a strong preference, right? So if you all have a reason to keep it private, you all can. In general, what I would recommend you all to do is generally have public facing repositories, right? Because your future recruiters, right, do tend to look at GitHub, right? So again, use this as an opportunity to create a GitHub repository that you all would like to publish, right? So it can be as part of your portfolio. But I don't particularly care. Any other questions? Okay, so is other I had a so with respect to the embodied conversational agents project, right? So I believe there are 3 students that are working on this, right? And each of them sort of have their own separate independent threads, right? My preference is for y'all to still work under the same project umbrella, okay? Even though y'all are doing separate things, right? And then y'all can be y'all can prepare a consolidated update, or y'all can essentially provide separate updates on your respective endeavors, right? But while still working under the same project umbrella. So do you all have any questions or concerns about that? If you all are here, if you all are present?
Yeah, for our weekly report, should we do it individually like this, or should we coordinate and do that?
Sorry, you're asking weekly updates should be individual or collective? Is that your question?
Yes.
Yeah, so weekly updates are easy, right? Weekly updates can be like essentially each of you, assuming each of you is working completely independently, right? You all can essentially have a separate thread, right? Which describes your updates for that week, right? So that's easy. The harder part would be the presentation can also be, right? Like you all can have your 3 segments of your presentation, which you all can present one after the other. The hardest part would be the report, right? So for that, you all could have 3 separate reports. Okay. Are there any questions about that? Does anybody else, any of the other 3 members, do you all have any questions or concerns about that? Okay, if not, and I'm not sure if you all are even present, right? So whoever was present, please be sure to communicate that, right, with the rest of the group, and DM me offline if you all have any questions about that. Okay, so with that, I think we are done for the day, right? So let's end a bit early today. Hopefully everyone has fun plans for spring break. I know I do not. Enjoy the spring break, and I will see you guys on the other side. And if there are questions, I'll stick around for another minute or 2, but otherwise I will stop the Zoom call.
Excuse me, Professor.
Yeah.
Yeah, so actually I spoke to Jerry and he said that we could like make subfolders inside the existing ECA project and then add to it. Is that fine, or should we just make a like separate channels and then
GitHub?
push to the final ECA?
Yeah, so completely defer to Jerry on GitHub, like on source code management, right? So if you all, yeah, subfolders is fine. Creating like you can sort of have sort of independent branches and merge, right? But that's a bit more complicated from a version, like a code management standpoint, right? So if Jerry prefers subfolders, that's perfectly fine with me.
Okay, and also Professor, like the thing that I'm working on, like like there might not be a really good result at the end of it. So how do I really present the findings at the end of it? Like if, in case like the method we're using doesn't really improve upon what's existing.
Don't worry about it. Yeah, I mean, at this point, like I'm pretty, I'm deeply aware of your project, right? So I wouldn't be too concerned about those things, right? Just follow. I think do execute to the best of your ability, right? Work closely with Jerry. If I see any concerns, I will let you know, but I don't anticipate any concerns, at least for the class, right?
Okay.
I mean, the scope of the project is really tremendous, so I can understand there might be hurdles along the way.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you, Professor.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So in that case, yeah, I'm dropping off the call. Bye, everyone.